Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 10-Minute Elections. Today is Friday, August the 28th, 2020. As I know, I have been out for a long time, just the school schedule and everything really starting to ramp up, so I'm so sorry for my extended failure to upload. But I am back today. I just figured with September rolling around the corner, it would be a good time for a presidential map overview. I'm just recording this on the 28th, a little early, but September is just about here. So we'll count this as the September overview because coming later and in the works, I have a North Carolina state of the day, and that one should be out around the start of September. So I've got a couple good videos. I'm looking forward to getting back on the probably at least twice a week video upload train, if not just for a little while before school starts for real in early September on the 8th, I believe, where I live. So here I have a 2020 presidential election map, all the safe states filled in, as well as the likely states that are not going to be competitive, I believe. Montana, Kansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Indiana on the Republican side. I don't think any of those are going to top 15%, but I don't think they're going to be too competitive either. I'll explain in a little while why I left South Carolina out of that. Obviously, that's a likely state too. On the Democratic side, Virginia and Colorado, just not the swing states they once were. So let's just start working our way from west to east. Oh, one more Republican likely state I forgot to mention, that's Alaska. So in the state of Nevada, I debated just lumping this one in with Colorado and Virginia. I think Donald Trump had a chance here back in January, February, maybe, but this state is certainly Democratic and trending as such. So I have no problem rating it as a solid likely Democratic. Arizona, the demographics are just starting to look better and better for Joe Biden and the Democrats. They seem to have a steady polling lead here, and I do think Mark Kelly is getting closer and closer to as much locking down that Senate seat as he would. So I'm going to go ahead and rate this as a lean. It should be a close lean, but I can easily see maybe a 3-point victory here for Joe Biden, if not 2.5. In Texas, this is going to be a further Republican lean than Arizona was a Democratic lean. I see Trump victory here, maybe 3 or 4 points, although Joe Biden's definitely narrowing it up. The polls have shown as such, but I think that Texas will ultimately be won by Donald Trump. It will be very close in 2024, however. Nebraska's second congressional district, that is going to be for the sparse data that we have here. I'll leave it as a tilt Democratic. I think that's tilt Democratic. I can't really see it. Moving on to the state of Iowa. I used to, at some point, classify this as a toss-up. Even said that Joe Biden's best point, it looked actually pretty good for him. The chances looked solid for him to win Iowa. It's definitely back in the Republican column. Still as a tilt, along with Ohio. The polls just ebbing and flowing, and my classifications of Iowa and Ohio, quite frankly, with it, I'll lump Georgia into that category too, although I'm not going to classify it just yet. I'll get down to that bunch of states. In the Rust Belt, I considered lumping Minnesota in with the states I didn't really need to talk about, but I did want to give it a quick mention. I think Amy Klobuchar could be a formidable presidential candidate in the future, although I think the Democratic Party is kind of moving away from politicians like her. We'll see how that plays out electorally. But Minnesota is a likely state, as well as Michigan. The electorates are a little bit different here. Minnesota's is a little bit more rural. You have districts like Colin Peterson's in a lot of western Minnesota, while Michigan, a lot of the Republican voters obviously have some rural voters, but as farming is a huge industry in Minnesota, in Michigan, it's the auto industry and manufacturing. So they are different electorates, Minnesota and Michigan, even though they often vote pretty similar. Wisconsin. Wisconsin is actually a quite similar electorate to Michigan's, really not too much like Minnesota's. It is a lean, and Pennsylvania also very much like Michigan actually in its electorate, although a little bit more conservative and a little bit more on the line in Pennsylvania. 20 electoral votes, it'll be 19 from here on, or after the 2020 presidential election, due to the 2020 census and electoral vote and congressional realignment. So Now that the Rust Belt's covered, let's move on down to the South, then the northeastern states, and I will talk briefly about the two-party conventions after that. So, in North Carolina, the polls have narrowed up. Donald Trump's actually led in a couple recently, first time he has in a few months. It's not going to change my classification, although I actually did debate before this video classifying it as a toss-up. I am going to go ahead and classify this as a tilt Joe Biden. Just too many polls from just right before the polls came out showing Trump ahead by, a point, where Joe Biden did have a not commanding, but definitely enough of a lead to keep this in tilt. I'm just going to need to see more polls that have Trump in the lead. And like the two we have to classify this as anything but a tilt Joe Biden. South Carolina, I've talked about this before. It is not a safe state, and it is not as likely as a state like Missouri or Indiana. I think we could see as low as maybe a 7-point margin here, but ultimately Donald Trump will carry it, and Lindsey Graham will carry it by a narrower margin. I think we could be seeing 6 to 7 points in the Senate race and maybe 8 to 9 in the presidential. Georgia, you've got Governor Brian Kemp here, and a tilt Republican state that will be a toss-up if not a tilt blue in 2024. But for now, I just give Republicans a slight edge. It is a conservative electorate at the end of the day, and it'll be very interesting to see Georgia down the stretch, how the polls, what they're indicating. The polling is still neck and neck, so I'm just going kind of with my gut here and with what a lot of pundits are saying and rating it as a tilt Republican. Because if you just looked at the polls, it seemed sort of similar to what we're seeing in North Carolina, actually, but obviously one I'm rating as a tilt blue, the other is a tilt red. Moving down to Florida, nothing much has changed here. I think we should see Joe Biden maybe 2 points. I know polls have been saying 4, 5, 7. It's not going to happen in Florida. I don't even know when the last time was that a presidential candidate won by that much in Florida. But even in 2008 in Obama's what would be considered a landslide in modern day terms, even that was a pretty close margin down in Florida. So Joe Biden is going to stay. I don't think anyone for a while is going to get past lean. I think, frankly, in Florida, just given the nature of the state, that's about the best anyone's going to do here for a good long while at the presidential level. Moving up to the state of New Hampshire, this was also one I debated grouping in with Virginia and Colorado. At the beginning of this election cycle, I think it was a tilt Democrat. Now it is actually a likely Democrat, has been for a little while. The Senate race is almost as safe, but Donald Trump is just so wildly unpopular here, and his policies really don't line up with a lot of the state's electorates, that I don't see a path to victory for him in the current electoral climate in the state of New Hampshire. Maine, I should have lumped this one in with Virginia and Colorado. The at-large is going to be a likely. The Senate race is going to be very interesting here, but the second congressional district, I read it as a toss-up in my August overview, early August, that is. I know this is kind of counting as my September overview. I'm just releasing it a little bit early. It is still a toss-up. The Maine second congressional district, I genuinely do not know which way this one will go. Maybe Donald Trump holds a slight edge, but this one should be. I don't know that it's gonna end up as much more than trivia, just like Kanye West presidential run at the end of the day, because this shouldn't sway an election. But ultimately, I've discussed before, there is a very feasible path actually, where if Donald Trump vastly improves his standing, he could get to 269, and then the second congressional districts, Nebraska and Maine, would decide the election. It would go 268, 270. Donald Trump would be reelected if he carried both second congressional districts. Likewise, Joe Biden, 270 if he carried both. So the Democratic National Convention, I want to talk about this real quick. You had quite a few speakers, quite a few Republican speakers, Democrats obviously trying to exploit some of the defections from the GOP ranks. Well, not defections from current GOP ranks, but past GOP political candidates, governors. Obviously, George W. Bush hasn't formally endorsed Joe Biden, but we know he's not voting for Donald Trump, and I do think that at the end of the day, he will vote for Joe Biden. Although he may vote for Biden, and I'm really not sure about that one. But Democrats obviously really trying to exploit that and um, show that Joe Biden is kind of campaigning on a better way forward. Obviously, pretty easy to campaign on what's going on in America right now. So Joe Biden just kind of providing the alternative to that, to Trump's America. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is actually using a lot of the same strategies Joe Biden is at the Republican National Convention this past week. The Republican platform largely revolves around fear of a Joe Biden presidency. So it's kind of weird to see that two parties with what you would expect to be vastly different messaging actually have essentially the same campaign and convention strategy, but very heavy on the fear of what will happen if the other party wins. That's obviously standard campaigning practice, but I haven't seen it used in a while to this degree. All right, thank y'all for watching. I'm sorry I've been away for a while, but I'm going to get back to creating great content for y'all, at least for a little while. So thanks for sticking with me. Please like, subscribe if you enjoy, and comment. Let me know about what you think about this projection. I'd love to hear your takes, especially if you're from one of the battleground states I discussed in the video. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and tune in, I think, later this week, or, well, it's Friday, so probably early next week for a North Carolina State of the Day. Adios.